Welcome back to the Manager's Mic. I'm your host, Paul Leon, expert sales management trainer with over 10 years of experience in management. I have managed over 25 people or more in my career. I am an MBA candidate right now, getting straight A's. Bam! But who cares about all that? Because this is not about me, this is about you. I've done some traveling for a project recently, and I finally picked up the book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I was really against this book for a long time. As somebody who has worked 100-hour work weeks, I didn't really believe in that. But I was really wrong about this book because of the fact that the book is really more about creating systems and time to give yourself empowerment. And there's a lot of books like that, but I think what I really liked about this book when I kind of was reading on the plane was there was a story that really stayed with me. And the story was Tim Ferriss, in a part of the book, writes to his staff, if a problem doesn't cost you more than $100, you do not need to contact me. I'm going to trust you to go ahead and take care of the customer. What he found was most of his staff was only dealing with problems that didn't even exceed $20. So I tell you that to tell you this, to say, what is it costing you to be a micromanager? You're losing reputation, you're losing status, and you're losing rapport. And I've seen that firsthand from a lot of incredibly toxic managers. So my goal is to help you break the bottleneck, which most likely may not be your staff. It's probably you. And that might be hard to hear. Hey, and if you want to feel better, blame them. Blame your mom, blame your staff, blame your dog, blame whoever. But if you want to get better, blame yourself. Because victim statements serve no one but you, but value statements serve everyone with the exception of you. And that's just the harsh reality. And I don't tell you that because I want you to be uncomfortable 100%. I tell you that to get uncomfortable, get more comfortable with getting better. Let's break through that bottleneck and expand our mind. You know that quote that we only use 10% of our brain? That's actually not true. Neuroscience for Leaders, a book I'm going through my MBA program, really good book, talks about a professor from Cambridge University who studied the brain. And what they found was, it's not that we don't use 10% of our brain. It's that most of our brain stays dormant because we don't activate it. Right now, we're consuming 44% more than the average person is from 2003. And that comes from the CEO of Google, that quote. And what I find interesting about the workplace, about culture, and about people is we don't take the time to kind of scale back, stay back, and do things that are good for us. My Spotify, I'll work out and I'll listen to these people who are like, dude, you got to work like 100-hour work weeks. You got to bleed, sweat, and tear. And I think personally, I do relate to that. And I appreciate that because like I understand that lifestyle. I remember when I was in sales heavily on the front lines, my schedule was 4:50 a.m., get to the office at 6 o'clock a.m., and I'd work till 11 o'clock at night. So I totally understand hard work. I get it. What I've learned from being a father and a family, I'm putting more hours into my work, not more hours into the work itself. And that's also another quote from John C. Maxwell. So let's get into some key insights that are going to help break that bottleneck and help get us closer to that ultimate goal of people management, which is empowering others and give you back some of that maker time so you're not dealing a lot with that management busy work time. So here we go. So rule number one, or insight number one, is you want to redefine your role. And it might sound really simple, but are you spending time with what good looks like? A good family member of mine has finally taken this step into taking therapy. And I think this person, when I asked them, why are you taking therapy? The reason they said they were taking therapy, they said, well, everybody said I should. I said, it's going to fail already. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, it's not about the general goal, it's about the specific goal. You have to define what specifically you're looking for. One of the things is always the SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-based. But just take the S out of the SMART goal and be specific with yourself to really get something out of that, which is what I want you to gain out of this, is you got to redefine your role. Is your role about micromanagement, or is it about empowering others? And if you're facing a problem, you're not supposed to just accept the problem. You have to frame it in the form of a question. So for example, if you spend time with yourself and you're like, I'm a toxic manager. No, I don't think that's a good statement to say to yourself. I think it should be, what needs to be different for me to empower my staff and not be a toxic manager? See, that right there will start to move the needle in the right direction. And so many people don't do that. And then we wonder why goofy statements like we only use 10% of our brain, that goofy misinformation, tracks because it just sounds nice. But just because it sounds nice doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it factual. There are people who study this. Rule number 2 is set autonomy guidelines. The fancy words. Autonomy guidelines is a nice way of setting boundaries. Like, one of the things I really like about my team and the manager I work with is they give me boundaries. And here's the crazy thing. They give me trust. There's a 50% double-edged sword to that situation. You have to be able to meet them where they're at. One of my old friends, coaches, mentors, whatever you want to call them, we don't talk much anymore. One of the things I did respect a lot about him was he would say, I'll match your efforts. I always really liked that statement because it also was not on the burden of the leader. It's on the burden of the direct report or person in that organization is to create that mutually exclusive thing. Because there has to be a hierarchy. You might be ambitious and you want to level up, and I get that. And there's a hierarchy for a reason. There's so many variables to that: math, data, organizational structure. But here's the reality. You don't have to just look up, look straight, because you can level up and be more powerful than whatever's up here by just piercing through all the noise and serving enough people over a long time. So that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, you want to batch your work into segments of focused time. So time block might be an easier way to say this, where you batch your work. So 2 hours, I'm working on this project. 3 hours, I'm working on this project. When I first got DISC certified, remember when I went through my certification process, one of the behavior styles I studied was the interactive. There's this guy, Dr. Robert Rome, look him up on Google, smart dude. One of the things he had studied in his analysis of the human behavior model was that kids who were high eyes, they were usually typically misdiagnosed as ADHD. And what they found with these kids was if they helped them and encouraged them to read a subject for 15 minutes at a time, meaning they'd start with math 15 minutes, they go to science 15 minutes, they do art 15 minutes, and then even give them 15 minutes of fun, they retained more in that short burst of time, more confident, and they tested better on scores. I tell you that to say, how you batch your time and fragment it needs to be what works best for you, but I think it needs to be also very focused and strong. Now, me personally, I've kind of got to the point where I can do things for like 2-4 hours straight and kind of stay in the zone. And that could be for a lot of reasons, because I want to feed my family. I've got a lot on my shoulders. That could be driving me. But more importantly, I feel that when I can stay on one task, I can just get more done. But if ever I feel myself slipping, I will pivot at times. So I want you to challenge yourself with that as well. Number 4 is make meetings count. What do I mean by that? I think we do a lot of wasted meetings in our culture. I personally like meetings with an end result or goal. And if somebody puts me into my time, it's okay to push back and kind of say, hey, what do we want to walk away with? There's a really smart girl, excellent marketer. One of the things I love about her is if ever there's ambiguity, she'll reach out and just be like, hey, I have some areas of ambiguity. I was wondering if you could help me out. I'm going to tell you why, even though that simple thing where you're like, isn't that common sense? Common sense is not always common, but this girl has more than common sense. She's very, very smart. And one of the things I love about her, she's like, I want you to invite any type of confusion I say to you. And I would tell her, I was like, that's fine. As long can we meet each other in the middle with that open lane? Absolutely. And we have this kind of silent quid pro quo conversation where if there's something I'm confused in, I'll challenge her. But I also invite her to be like, hey, did I miss the mark? I know it's kind of a weird word salad. Was there any areas of ambiguity I can clear up with you? And she'll tell me, yeah, I was confused on this, this, and this. You know what I'll say? That's on me. It was my fault. Let me go ahead and see if I can say it a different way, because you're clear communication. Super simple, major impact. I lied to you. I'm going to give you some bonus content. Let's do this. So if you are the one being micromanaged, what can you do if you're on the other end? Maybe you have a bed manager. Maybe you have somebody who doesn't take DISC training or going through an MBA program like me and is trying to better themselves. Let's talk about something called the ABCs of creating value. You hear that? ABCs. The A is for authority. What do I mean by that? To have authority, it's not position. It's process and purpose. My professor, Dr. Jones, at where I'm going through my MBA program, said, when management fails, leadership rises. I love that quote. I think it's a great quote. I'm going to pull that from her in our last class, because you don't need a title to rise above others. And if you think you do, you've already lost the game. Authority comes from action, activating that 90% of the brain we talked about that stays dormant, that we just need to trigger. And ways you can do that is just reading something 10, 15 minutes a day. So the B in the ABCs of creating value is barometer. You want to judge by impact, not presence. And impact comes from a simple word, and that's intention. One of the things I think we forget about is that humans are really good at sniffing out BS, like just really good at it. And you know, you get that call, or you get that stupid voicemail, or that stupid robocall. I hate those robocalls so much. Like, whoever, if you're somebody who's investing in robocalls, just throw that right out the window. Like, as soon as I hear like, hello, Paul, it's me. I just click that thing off. And we're really good at catching that because we know what good intention sounds like. We know what authenticity is. We can just feel that. And you don't need a book. You don't need to go through an MBA program. I want to stay on barometer for a second, because the way you're going to be judged doesn't matter. Judgment is very different in a couple of different ways. When I look at barometer and I look at judge by impact, I go into every project, every intention, and I start with the end in mind and I work backwards. And I feel that if you can lean into that and you can carry that day in and day out, that will organically create rapport in your messaging, presentation, and here's another one, preparation along the way. The last C in the ABCs of creating value is, it's a complicated one. It's a tough one. It's consistency. I'll give you a personal example. I have been married 10 years. I'm going to flex a little here. I tell my wife every day she's beautiful. And I think a lot of guys do. And what you're asking me, has it ever been on autopilot? I would say that there's been times where it may have been on autopilot when I've said it. But the truth is, I mean it. And I consistently tell her that. And when this podcast ends tonight, when I go upstairs and I put my kids down, I read them their stories, I'm going to tell her again, you're beautiful. And it's not because I'm looking for anything or getting anything. I mean it. And sometimes she'll say like, oh, you just have love goggles on. And that's true. I do have love goggles on, because there's nothing I personally feel she can do that would ever break our bond that much, because we love each other that much. And that's an extreme example, but I want to be clear here. I consistently tell her she's beautiful. Even when we have fights, I say, you know, I'm so mad at you right now, and you're beautiful at the same time while you're saying it. And I think you got to spend time with, can you not just be consistent, but can you be consistent when it's uncomfortable? And that's something only you can answer. So I feel if you can take just 3 to 5 insights from this podcast and just apply it in the next 13 days. That's my call to action. 13 days of consistency. You'll be a better manager. And even if you're not a manager, you'll be a better leader in everything you do. Forget the hierarchy. Forget the downline. Forget the left. Forget the right. Just pierce through the middle and get better. That's all you can do. That's all I'm going to do, because that's where I'm going. And I feel you're going somewhere too. I've been Paul Leon with the Manager's Mic podcast. Take care and go ahead and level up those management skills.